Hi friends, my name is Casey Rinkenberger and I am so excited to welcome you to the Instruments of Worship podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to encouraging and equipping classical musicians to lift high the name of Jesus with their instruments and also their lives. Today we have the awesome opportunity to talk to the one and only Dr. Kelly Hollingsworth. She currently teaches elementary music education in the School of Music at Baylor University. So if you are connected to the Baylor School of Music at all, you probably know the name Dr. H. She is dearly loved by all her students and colleagues, which is evidenced by her being recognized as outstanding faculty in teaching at Baylor. When I first met Dr. H, I felt so comforted by her warm, kind, loving presence, which was so meaningful as a college student far from home. Even though I never had Dr. H as a professor, I am so thankful for her Christian witness at Baylor. She is faithful to show off Jesus as a teacher, and I'm so thankful that we will get to hear from her wisdom today. If you think you know someone who might be encouraged by this podcast, please send it to them and make sure to download, follow, and subscribe wherever you are listening. And let's get into today's episode of the Instruments of Worship podcast. Hi, Dr. Hollingsworth. Thank you so much for being willing to come on the show today.
Hi, Casey. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. I would love if we could just start out by you telling us a little bit about your story.
Sure. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama with a great Christian family. My only A's in high school were band and choir, so I didn't really know what to I'm a first-generation college student. I didn't know what to study, so I didn't know what you would do with a music degree. This is, again, in the late 90s, so I chose music ed as my degree because I thought, well, at least I can teach, and during my student teaching semester, I really fell in love with teaching, and it was on my very first day of teaching, I had 8 3-year-olds by myself, and I thought, my training didn't quite prepare me for this. I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to teach people how to teach elementary music. So the Lord has always had a line through my life of where I will end up, and my current job is a professor at Baylor teaching people how to teach elementary music, and this may not be my last stop, so we'll see.
Yeah, I love that. That's so exciting. Did you play music all growing up? What was that like?
My very first musical memories are sitting on my mom's lap, and she would do little finger plays with me. So while my parents were not musicians, my mom's musicianship certainly was a part of my childhood. And then my parents bought a clarinet for $15 at a yard sale. So in the 5th grade, I joined the band and I played the clarinet. And later on, I also took voice lessons and piano lessons. And I felt I just really enjoyed participating in music. So that was how it started, was just some supportive parents, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then how did you go from that? Was it pretty clear to you that you wanted to go to school in music, or was that hard to decide?
It was not hard to decide because, again, my only A's in high school were band and choir. Yeah. I was far too social in the other classes and just didn't really study. So that gave me clarity, and the Lord has just always been gracious to me to help me find where I'm supposed to be at what time. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would love, if you don't mind, sharing part of your testimony.
Well, this is interesting because music has always played a part. I grew up going to church, and I was on a youth trip, and we were singing the song Trust and Obey, the hymn, and I thought, I'm trusting God, but I'm actually really not obedient to all of his commands. It was probably a slow dawning to that point, but I remember that experience, and I went forward, and at the time I was a member. I grew up in a Church of Christ, which is another interesting aspect because in that faith, your voice is your instrument, and you don't have other instruments to worship God with. And so I was at this youth retreat and we were baptized and we came back. But I think the other part of my testimony happens in college. So I went to a Baptist university, and music again played another part, because I thought, why is it that I'm learning how to study music, but I can't use anything except my voice to praise God? So the other part of my testimony is really happened in college, when it was this grand awakening that, oh, all things like music are made for the Lord, and I can use my clarinet or piano or whatever instrument to still praise the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Was that something that like your college taught you, or is that just something that the Lord kind of revealed to you over time?
The Lord revealed, well, it could be a little bit of A and a little bit of B, because when you go to a Christian university, part of your rep for your ensembles is Christian music. Mm-hmm. So that was certainly a part of it, but I do think the Lord revealed to me personally over the course of that time. Now that was definitely a slower journey to come to that epiphany moment, but I did get there. So music's just always been an important part of my life.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So now I just kind of like to transition to the topic of teaching, because I think it's just an important conversation, since pretty much most musicians will either do teaching as their full-time job or at least in some sort of part-time capacity. And what's so cool having you on the show today is that you teach essentially how to teach. And so I would love to just talk a little bit more about that. For your students, when they come into your classroom, what are some of the main ideas or principles about teaching that you hope that they would walk away with after being in your classroom?
Sure. One of the courses that I co-teach is Introduction to Music Education. And when you're teaching college students in music, they all loved their high school band, choir, and orchestra experience, and they're often dismissive of the elementary music teaching experience. And part of that is because that was over 10 years ago for many of them. It was a long time, so they don't have a lot of memories. Another component is college students are not familiar with children and child development, and their experiences with children are kids running nuts at the Chick-fil-A play place while the parents are just over there eating some chicken nuggets, having a moment of peace. But actually, children in school don't behave like they're out on recess all the time when they're in the classroom, and when there's an adult in charge. They're really kind of like puppies. They get excited really quickly. And, if you hold up a treat, they'll all suddenly sit and pay attention. So one of the things that I try to teach in the Intro to Music Education course is there's this whole other world to teaching that is valid. It is rigorous. It is musically and academically challenging. And if you can explain concepts to a kindergartner, you can explain it to a college student, because you have to adjust your vocabulary. And even when you're teaching upper level students, you're always going to have someone who doesn't understand something. So if you can learn how to explain it to a child, then you can help make connections with the older group. So that's one message that I try to get through. Another course I teach it's called Music in the Elementary School. So that is the course where it is elementary specific, and the goals are to build students' confidence to think, I could do this if I had to. This is an important part of a child's education, experiences, and music education, and we do need strong music educators. If they decide to go into music teaching as an elementary music teacher, great, but they don't have to. But the goal is that they respect that elementary music is important. So those are really the goals that I have juggling for kind of the philosophical realm. I think another underlying thread is what I like to call, actually I got it from Annie F. Downs, Sneaky Jesus. like especially in a public school setting, you have to be sneaky with your Jesus. So throughout a student's journey as a college student, slowly the college students start to realize that classroom management is important, and how you run your classroom could be the only Jesus that your students see. So are you forgiving every day is a new day, even though you have a twerp that comes every day and acts like a twerp? Can you truly let it go and let's hope that today is a better day? When you look at your students, do you have compassion on them? Are you empathetic? Do you see what's behind just who they are? Do you see your students as image bearers of God, despite if they reciprocate your generosity or your kindness? So that's another subtle thread that I certainly try to model, but as the student gets closer to actually becoming a teacher, that thread becomes bolder.
Yeah, I love that. We have an opportunity as teachers to really show the love of Jesus, which is sacrificial, and it's not conditional on how we're acting, and so it's really cool that you are modeling that for your college students even, and then of course the elementary kids. And I'm curious, at Baylor, because it is a Christian university, do you feel like you have the freedom to really talk about those things, and what does that look like?
100%. That is a huge benefit to being a Christian and working in a Christian school that supports that. We call it the integration of faith and learning. And when you leave teaching public school, it's kind of a hard shift because you're so used to being sneaky Jesus.
Yes.
But then it is like this, again, this crescendo, to use a musical analogy. You start off small, but as the years go on, you're like, I'm just going to say it. How you run your classroom is a reflection of Jesus. And sure, there are guidelines and boundaries that we should follow, and there's going to be students that don't follow those, but how do you treat those students? And sometimes it's, man, I'm really sorry you made that choice. That was not good. And the consequences are severe, but how do you deliver those consequences? That really matters.
Totally. So in the same vein as the last question, I'm just curious though, like, are there any practical things that you hope that your students will take, say they do end up being elementary ed teachers, or elementary, teaching
Right.
elementary music in school? What are some things that you hope that they might take into their classroom after being your student?
Specifically in the world of elementary music, I hope that they see elementary music is not just popping on a video and letting the kids learn through technology. I also hope that graduates who become elementary music teachers realize, incorporate just a lot of a variety of activities in their lessons: instrument playing, singing, moving, creative movement, creating and improvising instruments, and creating and improvising on your voice. I also hope that they take away that we're going to teach music for music's sake. The music teacher's job is not to let me help the kindergartners learn their ABCs. I'm here to teach them music, and if I'm not teaching them music, then what am I doing? I'm just babysitting, or I'm walking alongside a classroom teacher. So those are things that I hope, that content related issues that I hope that students take into their world as educators. But I don't think that those are things that are necessarily exclusive to elementary. I think I do want all the students to teach music for music's sake. And this is a hard one. I don't know if the students actually do this, but you don't have to teach the way that you were taught. You can use new and better practices to get your point across. So one example is elementary music teachers often use I'm going to sing this song and I'm going to teach it to you phrase by phrase. and then you're going to be singing the song pretty soon. Well, there's a research study that shows you can teach it that way, but if you teach the song using this approach called the whole song approach, the students actually retain the song better using the whole song approach. So we don't have to teach the way we've always taught. We can try new things, and sometimes they are better things.
Yeah, that's really good. I think with the elementary music, what's so cool is that you get to introduce this to kids at such a young age where maybe they haven't before. And I know that, like, I've been trained a little bit in the Suzuki method, and just how the importance of teaching young kids music is so important. I'm curious for you, you talked a little bit a while back about just the child development, and why is music maybe important when they are so young?
Oh, that's a deep question. And your Suzuki friends will 100% agree, but when children are born, they're born with the ability to learn any language, and they're just receptors of sound. So they're learning constantly through listening. And when we go through life it has patterns, and it has patterns of sound, and it has rhythms. So music just enhances all of those things, all of those other aspects of living. But I do think without music, life would be pretty boring.
For sure. So moving on, I've heard that you've said that teaching is an art.
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit what you mean by that, and then how does one go about learning that art?
Well, the art of teaching, there's lesson delivery, but the art of teaching is how you deliver the content. Are you always presenting it in the same way, which has benefits, or are you able to, the art of teaching also involves a reading of the room. Are you able to look around and see who's on task, who needs redirecting? I'm going to keep teaching and walking, but I'm going to come over here. I think another element to teaching as an art does go back to getting your vocabulary to match the cognitive level of your students. So you can't talk to college students like they're kindergartners, but it's okay to sometimes use the same vocabulary, but I have to tweak the phrasing to match their cognitive level. So cognitive matching is definitely an art. I think another art of teaching is lesson pacing, how quickly you move on from subject to subject or activity to activity. But that involves reading the room and knowing, okay, we're just not going to get it today. We need to move on. Or, oh, they're really exceeding. I need to go faster. So lesson pacing, cognitive matching, I think being encouraging yet clear with your feedback. So you can still give accurate feedback, like, friends, that was not really that great. However, we're going to work on this one thing. We're going to at least start and stop together, and then we can build on there. That's way more encouraging than, that was awful, do it again. So I think how you give feedback is another art. But again, that kind of goes into reading the room. But in order to read the room, you can't be in your own head. You have to know the material and your students well enough to be able to see out. So I think that those are some elements of teaching it as an art. Now, how you get to the art of teaching, that just comes with time and experience. It's real clunky at first, and that's normal. And your students don't know. It's going to be fine. You'll get through it, but you will get better over time. The thing about elementary music, which is probably similar to applied lesson teaching, you're doing the same thing multiple days in a row, and sometimes multiple classes in a row. So your Monday class may be clunky, but by Wednesday you are rolling, and on Friday you're having to pull extra activities because you figured out your wording, and you've seen where the students struggle Monday through Thursday, so you know, okay, I got to really slow down and explain this part, and then they're going to get it more successfully on Friday. So I think that awareness is also another part of the art of teaching, but it just comes with the experience.
And I love just how everything that you're describing really can be said about private teaching also. It's just on a more one-on-one basis.
Yes.
I love how you talked about sneaky Jesus earlier, and you already gave some examples of just how you can love your elementary students in the classroom by just being forgiving and having compassion towards them. But I would just, if there's anything else you want to say regarding that, of how maybe Christians, we are going to teach differently than the rest of the world.
We should teach differently than the rest of the world, and we certainly hope that we should. I just think if I didn't have hope, teaching would be quite exhausting and just depleting. My colleague always says you can't pour from an empty cup. So part of being an educator, you're pouring all day into your students, but as a Christian educator, I know I have an eternal source to fill my cup from whence I can then pour into others. And I just don't know how non-believers do it. Where do they get their source from? What fills their cup? I'm just curious, because without my eternal source, my cup would dry out really quickly, and it would stay pretty dry or only refill just a little. Maybe I got enough sleep, but that's not going to last me very long.
That's really good. We've talked about why knowing the art of teaching and all of that is important, but I also think there's a side of just relationship, and this also kind of ties in like being a Christian, of what is the role of relationship with your students when it comes to teaching, and why is that important?
Well, again, if we look to Jesus as the model, it really was all about relationships. There's a saying, trust is built in consistency, and you can have good relationships with others when you are consistent because they can trust you. And certainly as an educator, you're in a position of power and authority. And so how do you react when students break something? Do you blow up, or are you like, man, that's okay? Or how do you react when there's a disagreement or a scuffle, and you need to be the trustworthy and consistent figure, and you can have relationships with people that you trust, but you can't have healthy relationships with people that you don't trust, and it's their inconsistency in their actions and in their words that give you the discernment. I can trust this person or I can't trust this person. So as a Christian, being a consistent, trustworthy individual is going to help you build the relationships that you want with your students. But you also look at Jesus. He was really trustworthy and consistent, even when the disciples were afraid of the storm, or were I can't heal the people, what's up? And he's like, oh ye of little faith. He didn't yell at them or belittle them. I'm sure it was just a moment of, man, I'm rooting for you. You've got so much to do.
Okay, so now I'd love to transition to what's so unique about you is that you've had several years teaching elementary music, but you also now teach at the collegiate level and have for a pretty long time, right?
Yeah, I'm going into year 9. I can't believe it.
It's so exciting. That's awesome. So comparing the two, I'm just curious, what do you like about both the elementary music side, but also then teaching college students?
What I like about elementary is the puppy dog effect. You can see on their faces really clearly, this is amazing. You get a lot of positive affirmation. You get a lot of hugs just for showing up to work. And they're like, hey, Miss H, or you get a lot of positive affirmation that, okay, yeah, they must like what's happening in music because they're excited about it. And you can just like whisper something, and you'll draw them in, and you're like, friends, this is the best thing ever. Today we're going to use the scarves. And they're like, yeah. So I really like that. Whereas college students, my intro to music ed class is at 8 a.m. And it's like, okay, friends, we're going to do it. We're going to use the scarves today. And this is the look.
Totally.
I get no feedback. I'll say like a pun or a deadpan joke. Nothing. No feedback. And so it's like, okay, we got a tough crowd today. Moving on. And they don't even laugh at that.
Yeah.
Or I'll mess up and it's like, all right, take 2. Let's try again. They're just expressionless with their faces. And their body language doesn't give me any clues. So what I like about college students is that I can leave them alone in a classroom and go to the bathroom, and they're still going to be alive when I come back.
Yes.
They have better control over their body functions. There's a lot less blurting out. Their impulsivity is a lot better. When we do movement activities, I don't have to keep a side eye on anybody because they get too wound up. They figured out how to be a human a lot better than kids that are, 4 to 10 years old.
Totally.
And they respect each other better, and there's no beefs or, and then you don't have to hear about MPE, and it's like ruined their day. College students can kind of, they're better at emotional regulation.
Yes.
So there are some strengths. Now, something that but I do really like the littles because the affirmation that, okay, I'm on the right track, you're loving this, and the joy that they experience when they realize, oh, we've put this whole piece together and we're on different instruments and we're doing it. That's really fun.
That's probably pretty rewarding.
It is really rewarding.
That's sweet. So I don't think I've ever really heard your story of how did you transition from being elementary music to then how did you get to Baylor and all of that? Well,
I like to learn, and my husband my husband, who is still my husband, I was going to say at the time, but that wouldn't make sense. No, my still husband. When we lived in Auburn, he worked at Auburn, and one of the perks was I could get half tuition as a dependent. So I was just going to audit a class, and my husband wisely said, Kelly, at least enroll in the program. In case this comes to something, then you can get all these credits. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So in the summers, I just took music ed electives, whatever was offered, because I wanted something to do, and I thought it was fun. And then after several years, it's like, oh, if I would just take these statistics and research courses and do a research study, I could actually finish. So my mind shifted to actually finishing the degree instead of taking classes for fun. I never went to grad school as a full-time grad student. I was always a teacher. So I think that helped me because I could immediately apply what I was learning in my classes into my teaching. And after I did finish my PhD, I just kept teaching. I was quite content. Shortly after that, though, I don't know, it's like, I figured this out. I was becoming a little restless. Like, oh, okay, I know how to teach elementary music, and I can do it pretty well. And so then I started checking for jobs. And I applied for this job at Kansas State, and I got an interview. I got off the plane, and it was 26 inches of snow. And as someone who's grown up in Alabama, in South Alabama, my whole life, I'd never seen that much snow. And I got off the plane, and I was like, I can't live here. So what I learned through that experience, I still had to go through the interview. I learned a lot. But I learned I can't live anywhere in the U.S. I need to make my circumference smaller. So I need to be able to drive home in a day, and I need not 26 inches of snow. I don't need to live where I need to buy a snowblower for my driveway or a snow shovel. Those places are just out. I'm sorry. Yeah. So
Waco's thrown you for a curveball the last couple years.
Right? We've had 4 seasons. We've had flurries or ice storms. It's like, okay. But it's short-lived.
Yes,
I still don't need the snow shovel.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just kept looking for jobs, and then the Baylor job popped open. I really liked that it was at a Christian school, and they wanted someone, like you had to express in your application your faith, and I was like, oh, okay. So I applied, and I came for the interview, and I was offered the position, so I took it. It was a great job. It still is a great job.
Yeah, so what's your experience been like since then at Baylor?
It has been really nice. I think a positive change has been, while I do really like the school, like the K-12 school schedule where it's really structured, so I know exactly what I'm doing Monday through Friday, and it's pretty much the same. It has taken me a while to adjust to, well, Tuesdays and Thursdays look like this, and Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are real fluid, and that has taken some time, I think, because I've been in school really from the age of 5 till I was almost 40. So that was a shift. But I've adjusted nicely, and I'm doing okay. I also like that I have more energy and more time that I can spend toward exercise. Because as a elementary teacher, I got up really early, came home early in the afternoon, but I was kind of tired, so my schedule's a little more like probably normal people, so I do have the time to exercise, so that's been really nice. I also like the level of relationships that I'm able to have with the college students, and this may be just something about Baylor because it is a smaller school, and I only work with undergraduates. And so I do know my students by first and last name because they've all come through intro, and over time I do feel that I have a strong relationship with many of them. So I like that I'm able to go deeper in relationships at the college level.
So what would you say if you had to describe your teaching style at the college level to somebody? What would you say? Because I know what I would probably say just from a bystander, but I'm curious what you would say.
I would say engaging. I'll just go with engaging.
Yeah. Is there any specific way like you're thinking in terms of relationships or in the classroom?
In the classroom, my students are not sitting in their desk all the time. There is an element of movement in every class, and there is, I think in terms of relationships, I am conscious to engage with students and find out something about their personal lives, and like, oh, how did your oboe solo audition go, or whatever. But I also work on building relationships, or letting the students, having opportunities for them to build relationships with each other. So we engage, like in Intro to Music Ed, we have a meet and greet where they have to greet every other student in the classroom with a different greeting. So some days it might be with an air guitar, hello Casey, and then Casey will be like, hello Dr. H, or maybe you're doing a swimming move, so it's a little outside your comfort zone, but everybody's doing it, and we don't have assigned seats. We sit in a different order every day, and we have a share time, so that allows opportunities for the students to get to know each other. And certainly in like my elementary methods class, I model the elementary lesson, and then after we kind of break it down and discuss whatever the lecture topic is. So I'm just going to stick with engaging. Yes. But I'm curious, what would you say?
Well, again, I've never had you as a professor, just being a viola performance major.
Right.
But I would hear almost just the sweetness of what it seems like your classroom was like because of some of that, like, when you get to college and you're going through the rigor of the day, and I know it might be an 8 a.m. class, but I think I would hear about some of the fun things that you would do that might emulate like a elementary music classroom, and so that just brought like a not so much the stress or the the pressure of just life as a college student. And so I think that was really just refreshing and just sweet, but also hearing just how you are relational. And even with me not being a student, just caring about my life and those sorts of things. I even, Jillian Extrant.
Yes.
I think she had told me, was it after a final one time, you guys went and got cheesecake as a class and and came back and played games or something.
Yes.
Like, so many fun things that just are
like
super above and beyond intentional.
Well, I think my students are my children. I don't have biological children, but that doesn't mean I'm not a mom. Mm-hmm. So I definitely feel called to be a Waco mom.
Yeah.
To a lot of students. And I think that learning doesn't have to be just sitting in a desk.
Mm-hmm.
I think you gotta engage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In other ways to reach the students. And that's true for elementary through college.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I just think that's so refreshing. And again, it sets you apart as a teacher that they have to associate that joy, from somewhere. And so I just want to encourage you in all of that.
Well, thanks, Casey.
Yeah. So at Baylor, you're also a part of the OSO musical, right?
Yes.
Or whatever that's like. Could you explain a little bit what that is, and just for people who don't know?
Sure. OSO Musical is a free weekly music class for K-12 children with disabilities, and we meet about 6 times in the semester. And what's unique is a lot of these students with disabilities, the disabilities could be cognitive, they could be physical, they could be behavioral, emotional. But when these students are in their classrooms, they're in classrooms with at least 20 other children, and the teacher is always going to teach to the majority because that's going to help with behavior management. Mm-hmm. And the teachers, I'm sure, are also customizing some elements of the music instruction for these students with different disabilities. However, our class, we're able to customize the music learning for each individual student and his or her need. So if we need to slow it down because you have maybe some cognitive processing or physical disability, it's totally fine. And we're all really supportive. Additionally, each child student has a Baylor student that serves as a buddy. So every child has an aide, basically, that can help with whatever the task is. So I'm the teacher, and I'm teaching the content, again, reading the room, seeing checking on the pacing, seeing, okay, who's struggling with what. But because each child student has a Baylor buddy, we're able to kind of keep it at a pretty close pace. I do think our overall unit pacing is probably slower than an elementary music classroom because we want to have time for depth of knowledge versus breadth of knowledge and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that makes us unique. The children students who participate, their confidence booms by the end of these 6 weeks, and the children students are actually leading different teaching segments, and I'm not sure that these students with disabilities have the courage and the confidence and the time to grow their leadership skills in their classrooms and in their music class at their schools, because the teacher has to move on with the pacing. I totally understand. Mm-hmm. But because we don't have an end goal performance, or we don't have standards that we must accomplish by the end of the year, we're really able to go at the pace of the student. One benefit, in addition to the student's confidence and musical skills growing, is the parents have created a little community, but the parents really feel, I think they also experience joy because they'll be over there on their cell phones smiling and watching their child succeed. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm not sure that the parents get a lot of opportunities in a class environment to see their child thrive. Mm-hmm. So that's a benefit. Baylor students who volunteer, they have called it's an hour of joy each week. Mm-hmm. It fills their bucket so much that they're sad when it ends, and like that's what they're talking about in the halls at school. Oh, it's Charlie, he really made some progress, or whoa, we found our singing voice, this is really good. So they're able to celebrate the students' victories, and the Baylor students build their confidence in working with children with disabilities instead of being afraid of, well, they're different, I don't want to break them, I don't know how to, I'm just hesitant. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of benefits. Oh, so musical. It's a clunky and a zoo-like class because you have wheelchairs, people like children with their little computers that say the words for them, or you have some, other disabilities and they may be slow, or maybe they just want to sit and wear their headphones, and it is a little zoo-like. But after about 2 classes, it's like, okay, we're in the groove, and we all know each other better, and we can celebrate each other. Mm-hmm. And I know how to better structure the lesson.
Yeah, that is so cool. Is that something that you inherited coming to Baylor, or you started?
No, I did inherit it. So there was a girl who came and she was working on her master's, and she saw a need. So she kind of made this little grassroots effort, and there was another teacher who would come and she would teach the classes. I became the faculty advisor. We had to put it to bed for a little bit during COVID because we were dealing with the vulnerable population. Mm-hmm. And then graciously, the church music program had a grant to help us restart Oh So Musical. So that was really nice.
Great. That is awesome to hear. Last I heard, you were doing some research, I believe. Is that still happening, or what was that on?
The research is still happening. My personal research agenda is partnering with undergrad students who are interested in research. Mm-hmm. And it's students who will enroll in an independent study. And one student, she's really interested in, we're going to go really nerdy, vowel modification for choirs. And I don't know that much about it, but she does, and so she's done we call it a literature review, which is where you look at everything that's out there and you synthesize it. And so we're moving toward a survey. She's going to survey choir directors, and she's going to survey choir members on sayings or phrases that the choir directors say or the choir members have heard. So we're going to go down that road. I have another student, and she's interested in the 7 areas of rest. She's personally sad to see teachers retire because of burnout, and she found this book called Sacred Rest by Sandra Dalton Smith, and there are 7 types of rest. This has been revolutionary. So there's like mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, social, sensory, and creative rest.
Wow.
And so when you say you're tired, the next question is, what kind of tired are you? Because tired doesn't have to mean I'm just sleepy. It could mean like I just have a lot going on emotionally, or my to-do list is so long, I'm mentally tired. So she surveyed teachers and college students on their rest deficits, on what areas they feel most rested or least rested. Mm-hmm. And she's going to move forward with another study comparing mental and physical rest practices between in-service teachers and pre-service teachers. So she's moving along with that. I had another student who just graduated, and she was into vocal health practices for college students and high school students, and we surveyed a lot of people there, so we just submitted an article for that. Yeah, so my research joy is dabbling in whatever my students want to dabble in, and so I do the nerdy stat part, and I teach them how to research it and set up the study. So it's fun because it's always changing.
Wow. That 7 areas of rest sounds fascinating.
These 7 areas of rest, it has truly been life-changing because I'm able to better assess what kind of tired am I. And then I can zone in on how to rest from that type of tired.
Yeah. Wow, that is so cool. So lastly, to just close us out here, I would be curious what you would tell a Christian who is thinking about maybe either going into music or like music teaching, whether that's private or public, and how you might encourage them in that.
I will again share that how you run your classroom or your studio is a reflection of Jesus, and it may be the only Jesus that your students see. So that doesn't mean no rules, no boundaries. We know that we have rules and boundaries because Jesus loves us and he wants to protect us. And so when we deliver our consequences, we need to make sure that we deliver them with empathy. We're not blowing up. We're not throwing the music off the stand because we're frustrated. We're able to model some emotional regulation so that our students can have a trustworthy and consistent adult to model that.
And I love the sneaky Jesus.
That is sneaky Jesus right there.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hollingsworth, for being willing to come today and just share your wisdom. Yeah, it's been such a joy.
It's been fun.
Well, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me today. Please feel free to check out the description for discussion questions that you can reflect on by yourself or with a group. We actually have a Facebook page that you can join where we talk about these discussion questions and we answer them, and we can encourage and equip one another as we walk this road of being a Christian in the classical music world. Thank you so much to Dr. Hollingsworth for joining me. I'm sure you enjoyed our conversation. Please feel free to leave a 5-star review if you like this episode, and I will see you next Monday.